working on today is a sketch on my watercolor paper so that I can prepare it for painting process. This is a time lapse of my sketching, and I think it is sped up by about 12 to 1. So that gives you an idea of how much faster this is than the actual sketching. And I think the entirety of this video is about 10 minutes. So it took me about 2 hours to do this drawing that you're going to see me do in the next 10 minutes. I am using mechanical pencils, and I'm switching back and forth because, well, first of all, the paper that I've got here is Canson's Moulin du Roi watercolor hot press 300 pound. And I love it for painting on as a painting surface. It is wonderful, especially for the techniques that I utilize, which require a lot of lifting and scrubbing, and it allows me to do that without damaging the paper surface itself. And secondly, it's 300 pound, and there's not a whole lot of watercolor or paper choices that are at this weight. And I like the thicker paper because that means it is there's less buckling and less warping of the paper itself, especially when I'm applying large copious amounts of water and really soaking things, and that's going to make the paper perhaps warp and buckle during the painting process itself, but once it dries out, everything pretty much flattens. So I like that aspect of using heavier weight paper as well. Now back to the point I was saying about how I am using two different mechanical pencils, because one of these pencils, the silver one that you see me using currently there, is a 0.5 lead, and I believe that that one is HB hardness, while the other one, the green pencil, I'm not using it currently at this point in the video, but you'll see me swap back and forth. Oh, there it is. That one. It is a 2H 0.3. So it is thinner, and it is also a harder lead. 2H is one step harder than the HB. I like 0.3. That is my preferred thickness. And actually that green pencil is the one I use more often when I'm able to. It is my preferred choice. But because of my usage of this Moulin du Roi paper, I find it a little difficult for the harder lead to really get a grip on the paper. I feel like it's almost too smooth and too slick, the surface of it. And so the 2H doesn't really have anything, the paper just doesn't have anything for the pencil lead to grip on, and it sort of makes my lead slide over the surface, and you don't really, it's hard to see any actual mark making happening without pressing harder. And by pressing harder, I'm going to leave indentations on the paper surface, and I don't want to do that, because then that will be something that's going to be visible in the final painting itself. And my goal when I am doing my pencil sketch is to keep my marks light enough that by the time I am finished painting, with all the layers of watercolor paint that is going to go on top of this, you're not going to see hardly any pencil lines at all. The pencil lines essentially vanish, and I don't bother erasing after I finish painting. The pencil lines vanish simply over the course of being rubbed by my hand passing over the surface. You know, my right hand, the side of my palm is resting on the page, and it's going to be rubbing, and it's probably going to be lifting some of that pencil lead. Additionally, just the painting process itself, running your brush over the page repeatedly is going to be taking that graphite off, all the loose graphite, especially because I'm using these hard leads that are not going to really leave much residue in the paper itself at all. And as well as the just the tone and the color, because I want to build up my watercolor intensity, and just the dark intensity of my color is going to mask any residual little bits of pencil lines that might remain after everything else is rubbed off by my hand and by the brush bristles. So I get asked this all the time. People ask me, what do I do about my pencil lines when I have my finished paintings, because they don't see anything there? And my answer is I actually don't need to do anything. As long as you draw lightly enough, as long as you don't use a really heavy dark lead, and you don't draw too darkly, and you use a HB or harder lead, then your pencil lines will not be visible by the end of your painting. Additionally, if I sometimes see an area that looks like it might be too dark, the pencil lines, right before I paint that portion of the painting, I'll take a kneaded eraser and I just kind of roll it into a log and sort of roll that back and forth across the pencil lines, and that will pick up a light amount of it so that it will reduce the amount of graphite on your page. Now at this point here, I'm drawing a bunch of roses, all the background stuff. You'll notice that I'm doing a lot of erasing in this sketch, because I have another video. It's the previous one that I posted a couple weeks ago. But in that video, I show you how I transferred my very, very rough thumbnail drawing onto this watercolor paper initially. And I keep things at that stage extremely rough. I don't bother to try to refine the sketch, because I leave the refining for this phase, what you're watching me doing right now. So what I did when I transferred was I transferred all the basic information that I needed, all the compositional placement of everything, her pose, the roses where I want them to be. But as you saw with the roses, before I erase them each time on this, they're just kind of blobs on the page. I just left these circle placeholder areas, spirally blobs, and then I fill those in as I'm sketching now, because I want to leave my sketch as fresh as possible. So I leave room for that freshness at each stage. The thumbnail stage is about getting the composition nailed down, and then this stage is about getting the fine details nailed down. But if I had to redraw these fine details each time, that freshness would be lost. So it's something I want to leave room for development as I approach that portion, that stage of the drawing and that stage of the painting. Similarly, I leave a lot of room in this for the painting process to have freshness. I don't define every single element. I leave room for texture and just the interplay of the watercolor itself to have its own effect later on. Patreon supporters help me to keep creating new art, as well as funding 2 new videos per month with advanced access, granting behind-the-scenes insights into my workflow and process, and previews of upcoming works like this, and a Discord community of like minds. If you'd like to join and become a member, you can find information at www.patreon.com/StephanieLaw.